two-part story. So we're going to start with Volkswagen. Their CEO is worried that that Tesla has them beat on self-driving and software infrastructure.
Wow, I didn't think he was allowed to say that publicly. I mean, we all know that's true.
Well, the good thing is it's not public. It was a leaked email.
These days, nothing is private.
Nothing else.
Ward will kick his ass for that.
Not for long.
Yeah.
So why is that the important angle here, though?
Well, he actually...
Oh, this is your story. Go ahead,
trying
please.
to light a fire and get his team to play catch up,
See.
rather than just kind of sitting back and retrenching. So that part was really cool to me, because like Patrick and Mark and I keep saying is we don't want Tesla to just run away with all the high tech stuff and the green. We want there to be other options, because without a check they will probably be, instead of chaotic good, they'll become very evil.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're chaotic good. So yes, they do some weird stuff, and then they do some bad stuff. And on average, they're progressing in the positive direction. But without that foil, they will be all over the map towards evil.
Yeah, so an external threat is definitely one way to motivate a company. And we saw this with the Volt. Was it Revenge of the Electric Car, or Who Killed the Electric Car? One those Bob Lutz was talking about how it was Revenge of the Electric Car, that only because he could point to Tesla was he able to cut through a bunch of the naysayers and the bureaucrats within General Motors to make the Volt happen. And so this is a great way, if you have a company that where they're saying, no, we can't do that, that can't be done, you can point to some competitor and say, look, they are eating our lunch. We need to get off our ass. We need to stop doing things the way we've always done them and be bold. So, yeah, good for them. I hope that they make some great vehicles out of it.
Yep, and they're getting a little bit of practice right now with that field of ID3s sitting out there that needed an update before they can go to sale. And hopefully they'll take all those lessons and do the right thing. I mean, these cars, once they get their update, there's nothing really stopping them from getting over-the-air updates or Wi-Fi updates at the very least. Or even like Ford did when Sync first came out. You take your USB stick and you shove it in the console and you wait. Something other than what you sold the car with is what it stays with forever. That would be awesome.
Yeah. A friend of mine had an electric Golf, and he's a software guy. He was not impressed with their software offering.
But speaking of more software, last week, very recently, Tesla released their public build of the beta of the stop sign and stoplight control beta. So had to get the order right, and I had the opportunity to take that out for a spin for a couple hours, and it's interesting because you can tell their technique is to have the driver label all of the stop signs and stoplights for them. The car's like, I see a stoplight. Is it there or is it not? And then based on how you respond, it kind of pre-labels it and sends it off to the queue to go get confirmed. And like they're not sitting still. They're a moving target. And this is pretty exciting because the only time that mine really failed was when I had a stop sign around the corner from another stop sign, around the corner from another stop sign.
Yeah, there are some weird intersections out there that are even difficult for humans to navigate. So it's there are going to be some failures. It is beta. If you're using it, pay attention. You're the responsible neural net behind the wheel, not the computer. So yeah, be safe.
Yeah, so it did. With that particular one, it got the first stop sign, and then it just kept stopping, and so it took over right there. And then on the city streets, it sees some of the controls before you even arrive. Like if they're covered by a big truck or you're coming around a hill, and others it doesn't see, and it reacts appropriately once it does catch them. And it's pretty smooth at the starts and the stops, and you can just see the potential there for when they start to unleash this thing, and that is exciting going forward into the future.
So, Casey,
I expect they could correct the database pretty quick with human input, right?
Yes. And then from those human inputs, if the data they're gathering is good enough, they can then say, 99.999% of the time, if it looks like this, it's a red light, and the stop bar is actually here instead of where it should be, or it's a turning lane. And then if they have whatever level of confidence they need, it can just automatically react instead of having to confirm with the user. What were you asking?
Casey, I'm just so you're using this beta software, and I would kind of appreciate, like, give me an idea of what it's like to drive with this software. Like, when you say you have to confirm, what do you actually have to do? You're driving down the road.
Yes.
What happens?
So it's pretty cool. When they first described it to me, I was like, I'm going to try that for the video, and I'm going to be annoyed by it. I'm going to turn it off. And I found it to be quite the opposite. So what happens is when the car sees us, if you're in cruise control or in the auto steer, the car will stop at every traffic control it sees. So that'd be stop signs, green lights, yellow lights, and red lights. And
hopefully it's not stopping at the green lights.
If you are not doing your part, it will stop at the green light. And but because your part is to pay attention and make sure that the car is doing what it's supposed to be doing. So what you do in the legacy cars is you'll pull the autopilot stalk or push the accelerator pedal. And in the new cars, the Model Y and the Model 3, you'll pull down on the gear shift or push the accelerator pedal, and that will confirm what's going on. If you come up to a confirmed stop sign where the car is very sure it's a stop sign, and you try to override it, it won't run the stop sign until it hits 0 first, and that's pretty cool. What I did find in my release, the 2020.12.6, 2020.12, yeah, .6, that same sometimes holds for red lights, but not always. So I was just kind of playing around, and the light was red. The car was stopped. It had the red lights on the screen, and it had the red stop bar. I'm going to stop here. And I pulled the lever, and it started to go out in traffic. I was like, no, brake. And at that point, I was like, well, I wonder what the criteria are to make this hold at the stop signs and the red lights. And so I was at another red light, and I pulled the bar again, and the car's like, no, dumbass, you're not going out into traffic. It just sat there.
Now, what about if you hit an amber light, can it gun it?
Yes,
and go through?
yes. And so it won't gun it, but if it thinks that you have time, it won't bother you, and it'll let you go on through it, assuming that you've already confirmed that there is, yes, I know there's a light on, yes, I want to proceed. But if you tell it yes, and it thinks the light's going to turn red, or the light does turn red, and it knows it can safely stop, it'll slam on the brakes, and it'll just stop right there. And that's pretty cool.
It'd be more fun if it gunned it.
It would be, but then somebody is going to say, "Oh, Tesla ran the light, not me."
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And
I kind of think of the AI as a preventative to the human tendency to gun it.
Exactly. And it's got a couple of different modes for stopping. If it's below 35 miles an hour, it's the smoothest, silkiest experience I've ever had. And if you are above 35 miles an hour, say 45, 50, depending on the roads and the stoplight, it gets a little aggressive and lasts a minute with the stops. But what I do like is now, if you come up upon an intersection and the car can already see the light is red, you saw it way back, and then there's traffic in front. Now, instead of trying to race to the light, it's going to actually take that input that it receives from the traffic and start slowing down gently instead of at the last minute, like, hey, why aren't you guys going on this road?
Oh, cool.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, that gives time for the light to change. You might even do some hypermiling there.
It does, and I've actually done a couple glides through the lights as they change. It's pull the trigger and it just picks up momentum.
We gotta get Tony to train the neural net for hyper miling.
Exactly. And then I found that on the takeoffs, depending on where you are and who's in front of you or not, is kind of hit or miss as far as if it's going to be super ginger or if it's going to be very aggressive. If you're in the front of the line, depending on what it's chosen for, I guess the same as when it slams on the brakes or gently comes to a stop, it'll take off like a normal person. Like the people around you are already taking off at that speed, at that reaction time, and it's like slower than I would do because I'm in a performance car and it's fun to just launch when you're in the pole position. But not enough that the people behind you are going to run you over. But I found that sometimes when you're behind somebody, it's a little extra cautious. Like it's assuming that they're going to either just wait on the light because they're texting on their phone, or it's assuming that they're going to take off like somebody's grandmother. and just go very slowly. And so it gives them a little too much of a gap. But I do find that it's not leaving room for people to cut you off as they go through the intersection, which is quite nice.
That is nice. We need an LA traffic mode where as soon as the light changes, it just starts honking. And
Yes.
Yeah.
New
So
York.
I had some friends, some coworkers. They were in Chicago, and they were in a rental car, and they were following me. Of course, I knew where I was going, and I told them, just stay on my bumper and follow me.
Yeah.
But they were not from an aggressive place. They followed me at such a distance, and I'm not making this up, I swear to you. They were so far behind me, a school bus merged between I'm like, really? Really? That was some following distance right there.
Yes. Wow.
I could tell you in Florida that I've seen some really aggressive school bus drivers, but all I had to say was Florida there, really. So,
Yeah.
Not fair.
And so one of the other things that they did that they didn't put in the release notes is they have tweaked the smart summon feature a little bit further. It's very, very confident in itself, so it'll take corners faster than you would expect. And it's while I was demonstrating this, some birds took liberty with my car, and so I ended up with a baby wipe full of bird mess, and I didn't want to put it in the car, so I had the car follow me, and it was quite comical because it was like all those scenes in the movies where somebody gets out of the car and their significant other is like, no, get back in the car. They're just driving beside them. The car is just following me. It's like, I'm sorry, come on.
Sounds like a big mechanical pet.
Yeah.
Taking your car for a walk.
Yes. It does have a distance limit. Thankfully, the mall was closed, so when it decided to beat itself in the middle of the parking aisle up front, there was nobody to either cause a mishap or get royally offended. So
the world's most expensive ambulatory Tamagotchi. Congratulations, Tesla. Congratulations.
But so I had to go somewhere for work yesterday at one of my work locations, and the parking spaces were way too narrow. Like every space was a compact car space. There was a Prius C that filled the space. And
Wow.
when I came in, it is a tiny spot. When I came in, it looked a little more spacious because the first couple cars I saw were Fiat 500s. Then I saw the Prius, and I was like, this is not going to end well. And I managed to find a space next to a Model S and some Audi. And so I parked. Well, first I let the car auto park, and then I realized that I hit the button and the door opened, but I didn't fit out. So I pulled it forward, got out with it in the middle of the lane. I pushed it back, and I was like, I hope that nobody has to leave before I do. And thankfully, I was the first one of that group to leave, and so I knew I didn't fit back inside the gap. So I called the car to me, and it was quite nice. But imagine if I had a wheelchair or crutches, or I think this is headed in the right direction.